Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Report. I'm Jarret Johnson, and the Red Raiders have an open date this weekend. They're not playing anyone. They're getting ready. They have 2 weeks before they play Oklahoma State on November 28th, and then they wrap the season, the regular season, against Kansas at home. So there wasn't a Monday presser, but Texas Tech head coach Matt Wells did meet with us local media folk on Wednesday, and there was only a handful of us media that were asking questions, so I had an opportunity to ask more questions than usual, and of course I pounced at the opportunity because you have the head coach available. Why not get as much information as you can? I think in discussing my main takeaways from this press conference, this post-practice media availability, the first thing would have to be injury updates and kind of roster updates. For one, Nick McCann, senior nose guard, who could have come back next season, and if he was healthy enough, play this season. He has left the program, no longer under his own volition. Coach Matt Wells said Coach Wells declined to elaborate. He said he'd let McCann explain himself and why he chose to leave the program. I'm not sure unless McCann gave me the heads up. Okay, I wouldn't share that either, but I know McCann's been hurt a lot. He was hurt this year, but it's a real shame because I feel like he's been a consistent performer. He's been good, but could never really sustain being the starter, I think in large part because of injuries. But even this year, he was effective when he played. I mean, you look at the Texas game, I believe he had 2 tackles for loss, and they had no answer for him. So when he was able to play, when he was healthy, McCann was either A, a guy who tied up several blockers and couldn't be pushed around in the running game, or B, especially here like this season and when he played last season, he actually made some noise despite being, a very large human being. So I really like Nick. I remember when he was being recruited and when he committed and all that, and interviewing him several times coming out of Arkansas, the Texarkana area, just what he wants to do with his life and how he was excited about starting in the Texas Tech hospitality program, and that his grandma taught him how to cook and how much enjoyment he gets out of that, and how he wants to be a cook and a restaurant owner and all that. So I don't know if Nick wants to play another season and he plans on transferring somewhere, or if he wants to get started, and that is what he wants to do. I have followed up with him over the years, at least within the last year or so. He did say he still plans on doing that, being a restaurant tour. And I have some close friends that are like brothers to me that are in that business, and boy, what a difficult and rewarding business that is, I wish Nick the best of luck if that's what he's doing, if he's starting on that career track. But he's just a good guy. I think he was a good player who just could never stay healthy here. All right, but other injury updates is Keyshawn Carter, who early in the season looked like the best player on the team. He had a bad elbow injury, and then last game against Baylor, he went down, and it was obvious he was in a lot of pain. It turns out he broke his collarbone, and he had to have surgery Wednesday, so he's out for the season. So hopefully he can make a full recovery and come back next year, because he had really started developing into one of the better receivers and one of the better threats in the conference. So that's a shame to see that, but that is where we're at. And then Eli Howard, who has been a borderline, he's been an all Big 12 performer, veteran. He missed some time. He's been battling a knee injury. I'd heard that he was going to be out for the season, but Coach Wells said he's more day-to-day, and they're trying to get him right to play in these final games. So on a lighter note, I did double-check on Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings, other defensive linemen, and Coach Wells said they were good to go. Even though they got hurt, they were able to return in the game against Baylor, and that they're good to play. They're practicing all that. So those are the major injury and roster updates from Coach Wells. I also asked Coach Wells about the quarterback snaps. There's a free story, of course, on Inside the Red Raiders, which you could read about that in some of his quotes. But bottom line is, he said based on the Bowman's fourth quarter performance, he is receiving the first snap. So if they played today, he would start. But both quarterbacks, they're splitting QB1 snaps in practice, and regardless of who starts, the plan is for both, again, to play against Oklahoma State, just like they did against Baylor. So I mean, it worked against Baylor. We'll have to see if it works against Oklahoma State. But I understand going with Bowman based on that. I mean, that was a very dominant performance by Texas Tech in the fourth quarter. They were down by 11. They ended up scoring, the 12 points they needed. They won on like a walk-off kick, at the end, Jonathan Garibay. But their offense scored on all 3 possessions, and their defense kept Baylor from scoring on all 3 possessions in the fourth quarter. So, you got to tip the cap to Bowman. His stats weren't all that impressive. He did throw a pick 6 early in the game, but, the W and the way he led the team down the field on those 3 possessions was very impressive to me. Other updates, I asked Coach Wells what the team does during the off season. He's mentioned before that in his career his teams are 9-2 coming off the bye week, and he said this week he felt like maybe even more than usual in bye weeks that everyone needed a break from the facility. So they're working, but then this weekend he's given them basically like a 48-hour pass. He said, which they normally don't do in the season, but he just feels like with COVID, just the stress of the season in general, that everybody needs kind of a break. And then they'll reset and they'll have a regular game week next week, getting ready for Oklahoma State. But they haven't been practicing a lot. It's like it's easy or anything like that. He just feels like in order for them to get refreshed, both mentally and physically, it was not just the players, but the coaches and all the staff to kind of give everybody a break. So he mentioned he's going to be going to his son's playoff 6th grade flag football game, which is pretty cool. He's probably going to catch Oklahoma State, being a Okie himself, watching the Bedlam game. I'll be watching that game Saturday as well. So all that makes sense to me. I get where he's coming from there. That makes a lot of sense. Now, in terms of recruiting, I actually asked Coach Wells about the state of recruiting. It is an off week, so this was, to me, was a good time to ask about this kind of question. Now, I said, preface the question. Of course, you can't, mention anybody individually, but, early sign period is December 16th, so less than a month away. It's, it's coming on. So I asked him basically how he feels about the class. He smiled real big, and he even said the reason why he smiled real big is because he does feel really good about the guys that they have committed in his class so far. But he did say that, and definitely, and other people I've talked with in and around the program, that this is going to be the case. That we'll see it with the numbers, that basically they're going to be looking to get older again, which from the rest of the class, which that means junior college and hitting the transfer portal life there. They're going to be hitting the portal hard, maybe even not until after in December or later on in the year, later on in the off season. So. I think that's just where they're at right now. What I do like, I know a lot of people are like, you're mortgaging the future to try and, satisfy the now and getting these junior college and transfer guys. But what I like is they're not reaching on high school guys. You can tell they get to a level like, all right, this is where we think these are viable players that are going to play. Like, not just getting guys that are going to sit. Because there's so many classes are backfilled with guys that just aren't going to see the field, and we've seen that before. And it doesn't even really matter about the recruiting ranking in terms of 24/7 Sports and recruiting ranking services, but just do you feel like this guy can play at the Power 5 level in your system? And they don't reach on those guys. They're not just filling spots. If they get to a point at a position where, okay, we need another guy, but reach on this guy, they'll go junior college, they'll go transfer portal, and then of course it's predicated on what they already have on the roster. Do they have veteran guys, enough depth that they feel like they can go with in the next season, or do they need to get older instead of developing a high school guy? So again, it at least makes sense to me what they're doing, the plan. I do like the high school guys they have committed right now. I think they'll get another offensive lineman, either junior college or transfer portal, more than likely, if they can't flip Ty Buchanan, who's committed to USC. I think they'll get they're targeting veteran defensive linemen. They're done on the high schoolers. They have 3 defensive ends committed, and a couple of them can play defensive tackle as well. But they're looking at junior college and then possibly transfer portal if nothing works out with junior college in terms of another defensive lineman or 2. Same thing with linebacker. In DB, they have a couple of high school guys, like Lyric Rawls springs to mind, at a Marshall High School, really good safety, that they want. But after that, they'll go junior college and Plural Life. So that's where they're at right now. Coach Wells went over some other things in his press conference, but those were the main points. I feel like he covered a lot. I feel like he was forthcoming in the press conference, and there's some good info there. So look for several stories from that on Inside the Red Raiders and more content in video format as well. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time.